Obviously, we're all here because we care very much about this issue. What's going to happen to the future of Ocean Drive? Ocean Drive is Miami Beach's front door, and in many ways it's the front door of Dade County. When folks from around the world think of Miami, Miami generally speaking, they think of Ocean Drive. If you look at any sporting event, any major event that gets any national attention, they almost always cut to a shot of Ocean Drive. So it's something, as a beach resident, that's very important to us. And so anything that is good or bad on Ocean Drive, really hits home for us. It is an economic engine for us, for sure. It's one of the most famous streets in the world. Unfortunately, lately it's also become, for Miami Beach, our engine of crime. A lot of the crime that we have here in Miami Beach, at least the high-profile ones, have been on Ocean Drive. And so that's a source of major concern and embarrassment, and I think that's what's driving tonight's dialogue. We also have some iconic business establishments that are known worldwide. To my left, my good friend Mike Palma is one of the principals of the Clevelander Hotel and Bar, also host to ESPN. So we're talking about some major brands. And so it's very important that whatever we decide, we have to think about these types of businesses. And of course, we have the world famous Mango's, News Cafe, and countless other important businesses that we have to consider in this dialogue. And we're all here because we care about these issues. So we're trying to figure out policy to keep Ocean Drive as a tourist destination while retaining its historic character and something we can all be proud of as a community. I want to thank Miami Beach United for convening us here today. And then I also want to ask, as we consider this issue, what is the problem that we're trying to solve for? Why are we even discussing this? And I think right now, as we sit here today, crime and unruly behavior is our #1 concern. Whereas 30, 40 years ago, when Nancy was spearheading efforts to help Ocean Drive, become what it's become today, we were trying to save historic buildings. We're trying to attract investment and hopefully become a tourist draw. And we became very successful in those efforts. But today we've got a different issue, and that's the crime and the behavior that's occurring on Ocean Drive. And that's the issue we're trying to solve, and we're trying to solve it through policy. So looking forward to our dialogue tonight.
Thank you. And thank you for your comments and your years of leadership. And I have to enter you into this conversation because, anyway, fixing Ocean Drive didn't just start 4 or 5 years ago. It started back in the late 90s. We had just had a designation of the National Register District, and we were trying very hard to save all the buildings, but we had to have local designation. We fought bitterly for that. That was the days of Barbara Kappman, Horowitz. We had early pioneers like Jerry Sanchez, who painted the breakwater. What a difference that made. Louis Canales opened this chic little bar in one of the basements. I can't remember which one, but all of the people who enjoyed the place came and celebrated, all the residents. How many of you, I know all of you are residents, how many of you go to Ocean Drive? How many of you go to Ocean Drive? Not live there. Now. How many of you were here during the days I'm trying to explain? Yes, and how many of you went to Ocean Drive at that time? So the question that we have to deal with here tonight is what changed it? And I'm going to shed light on my own observations. I went out with the police while I was a commissioner when things started to go downhill. We went out at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't think I could do that anymore, but we went out 3 o'clock in the morning, and the place was a desperate torture to see what was going on. One of the tours, we brought the undercover squad from Dade County, and and they made probably as many arrests as has happened here in the past 3 or 4 years. It was a destination. It was a masterpiece. It was the focal point of this city. It saved this city from going bankrupt. But as all good things came to an end, little by little, tackiness set in. The classy little cafes were adulterated. They became bigger and louder. The noise element on the street was oppressive. People lived right around there and couldn't even bear to be at home. The snake charmers came. They are always attracted to the places where people don't want them, but they came. The trinket sellers came. It was like the great gold rush had come to Ocean Drive, and all of the entrepreneurs were pressing to get in there. A business district was formed way back. But unfortunately, we had a city manager who couldn't bear to have some other element taking over his power, so it ended. This is... No, I'm getting to you. I'm getting to you. After the tours, we would go to the commission. Commission was afraid to stop what was going on because there was a lot of money coming into the city. That's fine, but there's a lot more to this, as the manager said, that we aren't here to just talk about the economics. The economics worked back when the place was fabulous, when all of us went there. The place became an attraction. And what made the attraction? It wasn't the lack of police. It wasn't that people didn't love coming there. Why did the attraction go downhill? I blame the people who were responsible. Some of them are here tonight and know who I'm talking about. We need to set a goal. And I believe that the 2 a.m. ballot issue should be approved because it's like a line in the sand. It will be the first step in change. New York and LA don't have 5 o'clock rioting as was going on here. They don't need 100 police to protect the street. They have a very fine entertainment district all over, and they have a very fine tourist economy. I know I'm talking too much, but I just want to get this out. And then 1999, we had to find a new manager. And George applied and it was in 2000 that he became the manager. And the first thing I did when I met him was take him on a tour of Ocean Drive. I wanted him to see what he was getting into. He did his very best. On the commission agenda, it was always discussed. People were always there complaining what was happening. But he was up against commissioners who liked the idea that the money was coming into the city. They didn't want to disturb it. I think we may have the same situation now. I could talk about this all day. I just had to lay out what I've been very anxious to say for a long time, to express my disappointment in how the National Register Art Deco District has gone down to the lowest denomination. And it's time for us to do something serious. Forget the talking. We have been talked to death on this. Forget changing where the tables and chairs are, and those awful awnings are going up on the historic buildings. Forget that. That is not going to solve the problem. What's going to solve the problem is change. Somebody once said that it takes a drop of rain for a storm to start. Well, this ballot issue is our drop of rain, and it shouldn't stop there. I'm sorry that it's only Ocean Drive, but it should stop there, and then we can go to an even higher level of bringing back the culture all of you who were residents then can come back and enjoy.
Thank you, Nancy. Good evening. I'd like also to thank MBU for having me. I want to thank these fellow panelists up here as well. And I definitely want to thank all the residents that have come out to discuss this topic. A little bit about myself. I know that George mentioned I am the Executive Vice President of an investment group. It's a very small group. We own the Cleveland Hotel, we own the Essex House Hotel, and we own the Cleveland Marlins Park. I was brought down in 2002 to help develop the Cleveland South Beach, which we went through a $50 million renovation, repositioning, and I've been on Ocean Drive ever since, so I know the highs, the lows, the middle. I know what's going on there. I'm very acute to it. I think the most important thing that the business community wants to get across to all of you is that public safety is paramount for us too. There's no one in this room that's on the business side that's saying everything's fine, we don't care about safety. There is nothing more important than a clean and safe beach. Okay, so I want everyone to know that. If someone tells you differently, they're not telling the truth. We believe the same way, we have to work together. The second thing is that although everyone wants to not talk about economies and what this does, the factor is it does do something, and it'd be unethical on behalf of the city and anyone else to avoid that question. So we all know that studies are being done, and there's a significant loss that's going to happen to our tax base. Okay, so that's just a fact. There's a $20 million deficit that has to be made up somewhere by the residents to overcome this. Additionally, and more concerning to me as an employer, is that we are going to lose significant jobs, close to 5,500 jobs per the statement. But I can tell you from the Clevelander, we employ 450 people, 120 residents. And the day this passes, 100 are going home. And that's a very sad thing to think. So I just wanted to know that there are some serious implications here that have to be taken into consideration. But going back to what Nancy said and the quality of life issue, let's talk about the part that no one wants to talk about. I was on Ocean Drive Saturday with my family, and at 2 a.m. they went to bed, obviously in the Essex, but I stayed out. And there's thousands of people on Ocean Drive, on weekends especially. At 2:15, where are these people going to go? These are tourists. These are people out enjoying themselves. They came to enjoy the Miami lifestyle. Someone needs to tell me and figure out where we're going to police that much people going to other places in the neighborhood that are all open till 5 a.m. That includes South the 5th. I believe we got Story Nightclub. I believe it goes up north. I believe they can go to Fountain Blue. We are putting thousands of people on the streets that have already been starting their party and they're not done. And you're taking them from the entertainment district and putting them in places that are not entertainment driven. So again, things to think about. I think more importantly, and I know that Commissioner Areola will agree on this, look, we just spent how much time trying to light up Ocean Drive. We want to get rid of the dark. Dark brings crime. Non-activity brings crime. And now we're going to shift all these people off and turn it off. And then from 2 to 5 a.m., we all expect the crime that might be there to go away. So think about the implications here. I'm asking to open your mind. I know it's not a message a lot of you want to hear, but I believe this is not a silver bullet. I know that maybe Commissioner Areola used to believe it, doesn't believe it anymore, but we used to believe the same. There has to be a lot of different things done here that are going to give us a better solution than immediately going for the jugular and shutting down the brand at Miami Beach. Thank you.
So I'm Wanda Muzon, and as mentioned, I am from Flamingo Park neighborhood. So I feel like maybe it would be nice for me to speak about a little bit of my background and what brought me here. Because I think as a resident, probably the best perspective I can bring to the table here is this of quality of life. And since I live on 10th Street and I'm about 4.5 blocks from Ocean Drive, I'm quite close. The Cleglander is like my neighbor almost. So anyways, just a little of my history. 14 years ago, my husband and I were new empty nesters and looking to downsize, simplify, sort of the whole reinvent yourself midlife crisis or whatever you want to call it. My husband was working with some local architect and urban planners, and they said, you guys should come down here and check out Miami Beach. It's really neat. And so we had probably only 3 things that were really sort of important to us as we thought about, we could kind of move anywhere, and what did we really want? And the 3 things were, we really wanted to be in a historic district. We liked, that the culture of the history and the old fabric, which usually meant it was walkable, and that was very important to us, my husband being an urban planner. And the other thing was we wanted it to have a lot of vitality. We wanted it to have life. And when we visited Miami Beach, we said, oh yeah, this fits the bill. This is it. We like this. And just another little piece of the story. Some of you may know this about me, but I'm from a very small little town in North Alabama that, interestingly enough, all it has is just a small main street, probably less than 24 little shops, really charming and cute, but at 6 o'clock, the stores close, the lights go out, and it is probably the best example of the proverbial rolling up the streets at night little town that could possibly be. Oh, and the other thing, this little town was in a dry county, so there was no alcohol, no place to get a drink, and so picture that. I can say that I have lived and experienced both the polar opposites of the spectrum, from the small little town that has nothing and doesn't even serve alcohol, it's not even allowed, to living in international destination that you could almost define as nightlife USA. It has everything, and the vitality is incredible. So I can say that, having experienced both ends of it, while I love my hometown, my family's still there, I love to go visit, and it is a nice refreshing break of calm and quiet, but I could not live there. I like the vitality, and I recognize and acknowledge that that vitality comes from the nightlife that is offered in this city. And for that reason, I feel like we've got to be very careful in how we address the issue. My personal perspective is, I think there's really 2 things that we need to look at closely and ask ourselves before we vote on this issue. And one is, will this solve the problem? Will changing this time solve our problem? So, one, you have to have a clear definition of what the problems are. And my second thing I think you should consider is, what is the impact? What impact will it have on our main economic engine? And, we can't not look at that. Those are the 2 really important criteria. And my personal opinion is that no, it will not solve our problems. And I want to just quickly share why I think that it won't. I actually reached out to a consultant who is someone we have gone to several conferences together. He works with, he actually is the CEO of a group called Responsible Hospitality Institute. And he consults with cities all over the world on these issues, solving these issues. And I asked him, I called him up on the phone and I said, here's our situation. He knows I live in Miami Beach and he has done work in Fort Lauderdale and so he's familiar with South Florida, etc. And so I asked him what he thought on this issue. And he simply says to me, 90% or greater of the cities that call me in to help them with consulting for their problems are for when all their venues close at 2 a.m. Okay, so I'll say that again. He does most of his consulting work for cities when their venues close at 2 a.m. So what does that say to me? That it's not, the magic is not in when the venues close. The magic is in how it's all managed when they close. So I think we've got to look carefully at that. And we've got to look carefully at this impact, the financial impact. And you know, I think we've already heard a bit about that. And I appreciate so much the history that Nancy shared. And I love to hear her stories. And my hat is off to her and so many other people that way before my time that came and did some incredible things that revitalized this place. And I just want to say quickly that I also learned from my friend Jim Peters with Responsible Hospitality Institute that entertainment districts are much like they have life cycles just like humans. And he defines it, I'm just quoting him, this is not me, but he says, you know, they start out young and fresh, learning what they should be. Then they become accomplished and successful and popular. And then they begin to age, and they become a little tired and sometimes edgy. And then it becomes elderly, run down, things begin to decay, and not working so well. And because I am getting older, I understand this life cycle, okay? So I want that to be considered, that we need to, excuse me.
It's just going on too long. You guys have all dominated the conversation.
Come on. Listen, I'm managing it. Everybody will get a chance to speak.
We're exhausted.
Sorry. So I think it's important to know that almost every entertainment district has these cycles, and we've got to work with them, and we need to understand what cycle it's in and work with it. Just like Nancy and many other people worked with it when it was old folks sitting on rocking chairs and on front porches on Ocean Drive.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So, we've got some open comments. You know, everybody will have a chance to raise their hand and ask questions. I'm going to try to make this as fair and balanced to everybody, but you know, let's not jump out from the audience as well. Let's respect the folks that are speaking. You know, I'm going to just toss some questions out there, get some of the blood flowing. One of the things that I've heard throughout this debate is kind of one that what you said was, will it work? And so for Ricky or Nancy, if you don't mind, when you read the referendum question, there's a phrase in it that says, exempting indoor portions of alcoholic beverage establishments that are completely enclosed and located entirely within hotels. So we're kind of differentiating businesses. We're saying some businesses will have this referendum apply to it and others it won't. And we're limiting it to Ocean Drive. So tell me how you think that this referendum, particularly with this exemption, which I understand addresses a handful of the establishments on Ocean Drive, will really start to make that rainstorm that you were talking about.
That's exactly what it will do. It will clean it out. The one comment that I have against what the ballot says, best we have. We only have one now. I would have liked to have seen at least the entire MXE here, because what happens on Ocean Drive just spills over to Collins and Washington. Washington used to be worse than Ocean Drive years ago. And somehow the people there, those property owners, cleaned it up. You don't go to Washington Avenue and see the chaos that you would see on Ocean Drive. So I believe that if this passes, the commission will have the strength to move forward and clean up the rest of what goes on. And I just have to come into my...
No, focus on the question. We'll get back in closing comments or whatever, we'll try to get there. So, Ricky, any added?
Yeah, so, you know, I echo a lot of what Nancy has to say. So as to the ballot language in particular, the thought is that trying to restrict the 2 a.m. rollback to those types of business establishments that are having the most negative effect on the street, because the street is also part of the problem. It's not just what's happening inside the business establishments, it's what's spilling out into the street, into the parks. It's contributing to an overall atmosphere that is chaotic and dangerous to the public safety. And so the thought being is that if you're a hotel completely enclose your establishment, then 5 a.m. is fine, because it is not going to be the law of the land of Miami Beach. And I don't agree with Nancy on that issue. I would not extend this 2 a.m. to the MXE, because then the next logical step will be citywide. And I don't think that's a good, at this time, public policy. So I was reluctant to go that far, and I don't think my colleagues were willing to go that far. So this was a happy medium to say, okay, Ocean Drive only, and only those businesses that are not going to be completely enclosed in part of a hotel. So that's why the ballot.
What's the significance of being part of a hotel?
Meaning that the bar is a small ancillary part of the business establishment, and not the predominant business establishment, without naming names of establishments on Ocean Drive that we often think about, because that would be unfair of me. But if you're a hotel and you've got a little bar and you want to keep it open to 5 a.m., fine. That's ancillary to your business of being a hotel. So that's why.
Fair. So now to the other side, I would ask if really this isn't affecting all of the MXE or properties beyond just Ocean Drive, or let alone even all of the properties on Ocean Drive, what's the big fuss? Why is this, going to cause all this economic hardship? Mike?
Well, I'm not going to speak to the economic impact study. That's not my, I'm not very savvy at that. We can get any fish kind to do that. I will say back to what Nancy said, that Washington is, in Collins, as much as you say Ocean Drive is creating the issue back, it's the MXE. What comes on Washington and Collins comes Ocean Drive. Okay, and it's not a client that is spending money in the restaurants and cafes and bars and whatnot. So it's not just Ocean Drive creating that back, it's a circle of motion. But plain and simple, this is targeting. Okay, it's targeting by the commission. They're targeting the 2 iconic businesses that are trying the last 3 years to keep people employed and create a valuable experience for our tourists from all over the world. And you can look at all Yelp reviews and all of our social media that people tend to talk about, and you can look at Mango's, and it is full of nothing but positivity and people that are coming here to enjoy that, and it is straight out targeting. This is what this is all about.
I would just add one small comment. I agree. I think it's targeting. And I would have to ask the question that if serving a drink after 2 a.m. is causing problems, why is it not causing problems when it's served at a neighboring establishment? I mean, if it's...
Businesses that Mike alluded to, which would be the Cleveland or the Mango's. I think if all of the businesses, and I think there's a total of 47 businesses on Ocean Drive, generally speaking, if they ran their business affairs the way Mike runs his business and Dave Wallach and St. Josh run Mango's, I think we'd be in much better shape on Ocean Drive. The issue is that not everybody plays by the same rules and has the same standards. And they don't get everything perfect, but I think for the most part, they're very, very good corporate citizens in this community. But the issue is, so we're not targeting at all. The problem is that because you can't target, sometimes there's collateral damage when you have these kinds of policies. And we're certainly not trying to harm anybody. We're trying to solve a real problem that we have in this community with the issue of crime. And as soon as we can clean that up, I think we'll all be in a much better place.
All right, so that's helpful, and I had, oh, Nancy.
No, I don't have anything to say. I have something that I think speaks for itself, and I'd like to do a handout. I don't know how many of you have seen the Herald article that occurred sometime in the summer. They did undercover work there. The Herald really did a terrific job. And I brought one page of it, and I just would like it passed out, maybe
We'll put it out here so that folks pick up what the chief gave.
Well, okay, I can do that. But it speaks to the question, is this what we want Miami Beach to be? It's a picture of somebody laid out on a taxi cab. Twerking? I don't know
Oh, twerking.
what that was. I can't really describe it.
It's twerking, ladies and gentlemen.
That is what I
Okay.
wrote.
All right, so let's focus. So Mike, you feel you're being targeted, or a handful of businesses are being targeted. Commissioners indicating that it's the opposite. It needs to apply to all of Ocean Drive. But if we're still focused on, the problem we're trying to address is crime and safety. We just had our chief of police talk about crime and safety, actually crime rates going down, and espousing the successes that our fine men and women are doing on the road. So what do you want to add to that, Mike, as it relates to kind of your position, how you feel, your efforts?
Well, first of all, that's a great article, Nancy. I read that article. I think what you're missing in the article is all the comments from the tourists that talk about why they come to Ocean Drive, what they enjoy, and more importantly, that was in the street. And the last time I was like, we don't police the street. We can't.
Please, no, come on, guys, answer the question.
And I'm not trying to attack you. I'm just telling you that it's a one-page paper.
Come on, Mike.
Sorry, George. I get defensive, I guess. Look, the big issue here is that, as you alluded to, is 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. Is 2 a.m. closure going to fix crime? That's it. And not a single person has told me how. Other than by turning off the music and turning off the event, we're going to fix crime. It doesn't correlate. And what Ricky just talked about, and I do, he's my good friend, is that there's some businesses on Ocean Drive that don't behave. So now we're all going to suffer because of it, and crime is going to be the same, because we don't create crime. And if we do, someone explain methodically how that is happening and why 2 to 5 a.m. is going to cure crime.
Wanda, do you have anything to add? No? Okay. Rick?
Let me take a stab at it, because Mike and I and some others spent a year talking about this, and that was what resulted in the 10-point plan. I'll give you a quick synopsis of that as well. But what Nancy said, I think, is accurate as well. As Ocean Drive, when it started pivoting in the 90s, really became something that was a true international success that we were all very proud of, and it attracted large investments and some really great businesses. But over time, it has deteriorated, and it's deteriorated to a point where I think many of us are embarrassed and concerned about it for the long term and for the public safety. So the issue is, how do we reverse that trend? It's my opinion, as well as having studied this issue in the opinion of experts, businesses and the activities that occur in a certain neighborhood or street are what attract either the vices or another type of clientele. And so over time, past maybe 20 years, we've sort of had a race to the bottom. I think there's been a lack of oversight, a lack of principled operators working on Ocean Drive. And what has happened is we've gotten to where we're at today, where we've got a lot of crime, we've got things that we're not very proud of, So the 10-point plan did a lot of things, and it's still in the works, but one of the things we did is work on aesthetics. So we got rid of the gauntlet, if you guys remember just a few months ago, where it was very unsafe for you to walk on the west side of Ocean Drive because it was a tunnel effect. You had major awnings with no sort of rhyme or reason, and there was groping, pickpocketing, and worse going on. So we cleaned that up. We improved the lighting, and that still has more to come because there's many dark spots, and whether there's any police officer will tell you, wherever there's darkness, there's crime. Noise has been and continues to be a problem. The code of conduct of certain operators, the types of businesses. We recently passed legislation to prohibit certain types of businesses, such as, sort of the low-end type of retailer, tattoo parlors. Of course, we've always prohibited strip joints, occult bookshops, all these sort of low-end retailers. We have recently, just last week, prohibited liquor stores from being open in the MXE district past 8 p.m., and that's something new, but we have liquor stores operating as de facto bars with entertainment. We're trying now one-way traffic on the weekends. We've limited the ability of chain restaurants and bars to open on Ocean Drive. So what we're trying to do is clean it up. It's going to take time, and 2 a.m. is not a silver bullet. If it was, I think we'd all vote for it unanimously. But it is one of the tools that we have to try to take control of the street. And what I'll say is this, I'm going to support 2 a.m. in November, but it is something that I will reverse as quickly as possible if we see it's having a positive effect on the street. And that you have my commitment on that. We're not trying to put anybody out of business, but what we are trying to do is clean up the street and get it back under control. And so what is attracting folks to Ocean Drive are the kinds of businesses and the kinds of operations that they're running, and it spills over into the street, and the crimes are happening in the street. If we change the nature of the businesses, the nature of the way they conduct their business, I think we're going to be able to reverse the downward spiral we've seen on Ocean Drive, clean it up, and get operations back to normal with, hopefully, first-class operators like Fleetwood.
Let me ask another question. Mike, there's a saying that the definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing and expect a different outcome or a different result. Those who would be voting against this referendum would imply that we're like, well, let's just keep doing the same thing and we'll just be better actors or better players, or let us fix it ourselves. And I think part of that was the collaborative efforts of the 10-point plan. What do you say about that, and how do you kind of, say that perhaps this referendum is the cart before the horse?
Well, thank you. I do believe that visibility for our police and for our undercover to work and to attack the element we don't want there. I think that the job that John and the crime prevention social media group is doing is phenomenal. They're basically saying, look it, you have your entertainment venues and we have this park, and this park is full of nothing but troublemakers and lurkers. Okay? The package store that Ricky just talked about at 8 o'clock is huge, because I'm on 11th Street every day at Tucci and Sons, and whoever owns that place, God bless you. But that place is feeding 50 milliliters and 100 milliliter liquor to a bunch of people every morning, all day and night, to cause trouble to our tourists. Those same people are paying $20 to have a drink at the Clevelander, okay? Meaning that they don't, to follow me on that. So the 10-point plan had momentum. We had, as Commissioner Arrow is aware, we had private security on the block. We had started the bridge to bid, which I was leading, and for those that don't know that, we were collecting $35,000 a month voluntarily from the businesses to create the bridge to bid, which is a formulated bid to get the resources we need to clean the street up. But again, someone got shot on 3rd Street, it came back, and it became our problem. We lost all momentum. I think, and I'm honestly going to tell you, if you allow us the time to put the bid together, you will see immediate and massive change on Ocean Drive. Okay?
I have a follow-up, and then but one day you want to say something?
Well, I'll just add quickly.
George asked all the questions.
Okay, hang on. We'll get there. together.
I was very excited to get the 10-point plan going. I think it was stepping in the right direction. It was taking action. Everyone was on board. The times I go down as a local and just experience Ocean Drive, I'm satisfied with what I'm seeing. So I think we need to give it time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not like a magic pill that everything's going to be different tomorrow. But it is a step in the right direction. And I don't know if the audience wants to hear this yet, but I think there's something to be said about the power of programming. And I can speak to that at some point, but I think it's really important that we understand that that can have a powerful effect, that they're based on the generation and look at the...
Let me hold that thought.
Very good.
Commissioner wanted to get a quick in, and then we'll open it up since that's what they want to do.
Yeah, so the bid was part of the 10-point plan. I think it's essential that we do that regardless of what happens with the vote. It's important that we have business leaders. And unfortunately, I'm going to just be frank, we don't have enough Mike Palmas on Ocean Drive. If we had more Mike Palmas, we wouldn't be here tonight. Guys,
And your special master process.
no, but here's the problem, is that they will nickel and dime you to death. You die a death by 1,000 cuts and nothing happens. We kick the can down the road. Fortunately, this commission has shown some resolve and backbone, and we're starting to clamp down, but we have to show resolve, because what happens is, and they were lobbying me here 2 minutes ago before this meeting started, your legislation affects me, can you give me an exception, can you give me an exception, and then what happens is nothing happens.
Let me just echo this sentiment, that is, no matter how much enforcement you put out there, if the commission and the special master process, which is the group that then evaluates those fines, isn't aligned, it starts to fall apart. And it's really demoralizing to our code officers and to our staff, or my staff then, current staff now, and it's difficult for the commissioners to really bring consensus. Let's start opening up some Q&A. I'd like to get some folks first if I can, folks who may live on Ocean Drive, who are really the most impacted by this. Ma'am.
I live at 15 on the Ocean Drive, and I've been on the beach for 19 years. And I go out to Ocean Drive every week. I never feel scared or afraid, ever. And I've many times been there until they close at 5 in the morning, and I walk home at 5 in the morning, and I don't fear or feel in danger ever.
What are your questions?
Well, my question is that, I don't think that they should stop serving the alcohol at 2 o'clock, because I think that...
Your question is?
No, I just want to make a comment. My opinion is, and I'm saying that the tourists, when they come, they want to have a good time. And I met many people from all over the world. And last year I was in Croatia, and when I was there, the guy who was my local guy said, oh, I was just in South Beach. I was there 3 months ago. And he said, the best day that I had in my life was a Mango's, one night, okay, having a good time. And I think that that's part of Ocean Drive, and that's part of Miami Beach, and it should remain that way.
Make your position into a question, if you may.
Why? Why can't the...
Because we have, this is a forum, ma'am, that we are trying to, you have 4 people here that are here to answer your questions. Okay, but this is a forum, and MBU has structured this as a Q&A session. Other residents of Ocean Drive, before we kind of go beyond that. Anybody here on Ocean Drive? Joe.
I have to have a question. My question is this: why are you wasting our time? Why are you freaking wasting our time? You've never had, the city has never had real residents of Ocean Drive on panels. They've never had them at any point in the process telling you what we know. Ocean Drive is a sewer. It sucks. People are robbed, they're raped, they're shot. I haven't been raped yet, but I was robbed right on the street. The police can't be everywhere. The police are great, but they can't be everywhere. And why should they be policing this area, which is supposed to be a resort? It's not, it's a crime zone. When you admit it, Will somebody be honest? This 2 a.m. closing is a step. It's a line in the sand, as someone said. We have to do something. Commissions have done nothing. We have to start somewhere. Let's see if it works. Let's stop with all these bogus studies. These studies that are hired, the expensive consultants who come and tell you exactly what your businesses want to be told. We know the answer is not that. We know there is a problem. We want it solved. We want it solved now. Our brand sucks.
I heard a question. Why are you wasting your time? You know, I think she was looking at the outside of the table.
You want me to say something?
Ray, your time to get in here. Why don't you?
My question is really to Commissioner Ariel. Number one, you say that you could reverse a referendum vote by commission. How does the commission get to reverse a referendum vote?
The referendum allows a 5/7 vote, a supermajority, to change it back if it wish. So the referendum includes that ability.
And my real question is, why, as an elected commissioner, didn't you guys have enough guts to vote on it to start with, without throwing out the referendum vote? I'm the sofas, eating potato chips, thinking everything is fine, and they'll listen to all of these things that will come out in the mail, that will all be garbage and fake news, and then we'll go to the polls and maybe vote the wrong way. What is really?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
And I came from a city that the bars closed at 2. Guess what? You can pay extra to stay open to 5, and then they took that money to do the extra police.
So, I mean, you're the only elected official now, so the question is really, why is this a referendum vote and not just simply handled at the commission level?
Okay. Well, so a couple things. So, Ray, so like George said, it can be reversed. First of all, I also think this is going to be a very close vote. It can go either way. I've seen some polls. It's going to be, we'll see. I've seen some polls. I mean, the straw ballot was 55-45. I call that fairly close. But then why, Ray, why is this going to voters? So I think you know as well as I do, and you know, I'm never going to sugarcoat things to you guys. I think, you know, like some commissioners have a tough time making tough calls. And that's why we punt things to voters or kick cans down the road. The reason Ocean Drive hasn't been fixed, I think prior commissions didn't want to deal with it, and we just kicked the can down the road. So we, as a body, said we're going to put this to voters, and whatever the voters decide, we'll live with. You said something very interesting, though, Ray, is that there are other municipalities that have a, say, 2 a.m. closure, and then they have exceptions for 5 a.m. That is something we have studied, we've talked about, and we were going to propose back in the summer prior to this 2 a.m. ballot initiative, which would have carved out and given back some power to the commission and the planning board to allow certain businesses to stay open until 5 a.m. Basically, we thought about rolling everything back in the MXC to 2 a.m. and then apply for a 5 a.m. license. And if you get the 5 a.m. license, so it would be conditional use permit, you would have to comply with certain requirements, such as in-house security that are trained, that follow certain rules. You have to have, you know, certain capacity limits, certain financial wherewithal. You would submit yourself to certain additional background checks. So there are still a lot of tools that we can use to hopefully make everybody happy. Well, so the 2 a.m. is not cast in stone forever and ever, but it is a tool. It is a line in the sand. It allows us to maybe get control over Ocean Drive once again, and then we revisit it, whether it's 6 months from now, a year from now.
Ray, let him answer your question.
Yeah, but don't you set the city up for a huge lawsuit by not making it citywide? You're picking a certain city or a certain street, and I'm concerned that if that goes into effect, they're going to sue, the city's going to lose, and me as a taxpayer am really going to be a loser because we're going to be paying that.
Okay. So, first of all, you can never be afraid of a lawsuit because that's always a potential in anything that you do. Our legal counsel has told us that they're very confident that this is something that if we were sued, we would prevail. And so that's where we're at. But you can't make decisions because you're worried about a lawsuit. If something's right, it's right based on the legal advice that we've gotten, both from our city council and outside counsel. This is something they think that we would successfully defend.
Ma'am, you had a question?
Excuse me, I have to jump in here. I alluded to it before, George alluded to it, but the question that was asked, why nothing's happening, as far back as when I was on the commission, and we would bring it in Technicolor to the commission, what the problem was, starting in the 97, 98, and anybody who dared to touch that issue would always run to the nearest commissioner who was their friend. That was, and they refused to move any further. It was the most frustrating battle, I think, that I've ever seen in the city. The city didn't want to lose the money, so they just kept allowing it to happen. It can't happen if it becomes law. They're going to have to make their changes and do it the best way they can. And I just wanted the opportunity, when you said that it was just a bunch of old people sitting on the porch, it had gone, when the National Register issue was finally designated locally, we had artists, we had young people who were excited to come here, and they worked together with us to make all of this happen. They weren't the old people. The district had kind of gentrified by that time. It was young people with a vision for the future. The tourists that we have coming now don't seem to be that sort of people. They are young people, yes, looking to have a fine time. They think this is Party City, USA. They have no idea that you even live here. And I think we have to do something now.
Okay. Ma'am.
First, I want to say that the commissioner alluded to, there was a vote last year. At the last moment, it was made a straw ballot. It was initially going to be a referendum. And the residents voted by 10 points to close at 2 a.m. But the commission decided to subvert that and put in this 10-point plan. I hold this whole issue on the hands of the commission, of which I'm friends with many of the commissioners. But somehow they don't have the will, and when I trace will, I always look to money. So when we talk about lobbyists, we talk about money. I am a psychologist. You are going to, between 2 a.m., you could attract a certain clientele who wants to come party all night. You are getting low-dollar tourists. Certain Caribbean islands, they go into the gutter and they don't have a toilet.
In many of our residential neighborhoods, we've already cut off to 2 a.m. So whether it's South of 5th, West Avenue, Wagner neighborhood, where I live, Sunset Harbor, there are a few exceptions that got grandfathered in, but there will be no more new establishments that can open till 5 a.m. at that point. There's very limited establishments in those neighborhoods that are open till 5 a.m., and we're keeping a close eye on them and the effect that this would have, if passed, on the neighborhoods. If we start seeing an influx of unwanted tourists and traffic into neighborhoods that have limited 5 a.m. Nightclubs, I think, or bars, I think we have to take that into consideration. But right now, the MXE district, with the exception of Ocean Drive, will still be till 5 a.m. And the residential neighborhoods already have protections in place that any bar that opens, as of a few years ago even, at past 2 a.m. are not allowed.
Thank you. I think it's really important that everyone understands at this table that what Commissioner Ayola is alluding to in Washington is that, yes, there are clubs, the ones that are left. The problem you have as residents is that all the clubs left in Washington are empty. And they're renting these things out to anyone who has the money to take it for a night or a week, and they're bringing down the clientele that you're all complaining about. So you're basically closing down the 2 owner-operated businesses that have pride in their business, that run a safe environment, and you're giving it to the place on Washington that doesn't care about anything but the money and the clientele, quick in and out with all the problems. So that's all you're doing, you're pushing that over, and that's the reality of it, so, sorry.
This is a follow-up to the previous question. Commissioner Ariola, your response to that question was, it doesn't apply to the whole MXC district. So basically what you were saying is the problem would be moved from Ocean Drive to Collins Avenue and Washington Avenue. Well, Collins Avenue and Washington Avenue are adjacent to the Flamingo Park neighborhood. Is that a good thing? It doesn't seem to me to be a good thing. If the proposed ordinance did apply to the entire MXC district, I would be in favor of it. But precisely because it doesn't, I'm opposed to it. What is there in this proposal or any other thing that's being done in the city that is going to prevent that impact on the neighborhood?
It's an excellent question. And so, I'll tell you this. One of the things that I think we'll see, and this is as a result of conversations I've had with our police department as well as other experts who sort of understand crowd control, is that the folks that are hanging out on Ocean Drive, once they know it's a 2 a.m. closure, some won't bother even coming here. They'll take their business to City of Miami and other parts where they know they can drink and stay out all night. Also, crowds disperse. Once a restaurant bar closes at 2 a.m., they just say, hey, you know what, I don't want to, we have to park or walk a couple of blocks, I'm just going to go home. So not all of it will spill into the other neighborhoods. So that's some additional protection. However, you asked a very important question, which is, okay, if we're worried about Collins and Washington, the entire MXC district, do we want that to close at 2 a.m.? I think, as a matter of policy, if we all decide that we want it 2 a.m. in the entire MXC district, we're pretty much saying we want Miami Beach to be a 2 a.m. town. Right now, I personally think that's bad public policy. We are a tourist town. We do derive a lot of our business from folks who want to come here, stay out, have a good time. And I think if we want to go in that direction, we have to fully understand the ramifications of that decision. Because we are not, although we are an island, we don't operate as an island. We are now competing with a thriving downtown Miami, a Wynwood design district, that are also vying for this tourist space that we have here. And so we have to think this through as to how far we want to push this 2 a.m.
Just give opportunity.
I actually agree with what Commissioner just said. And according to the statistics that I'm reading, some of the most successful scenarios have actually been for 24-hour cities. The ones that actually allow for, instead of closing at a certain time, you just allow it to happen around the clock. And the reason being that, and I know Nancy's probably freaking out here, and I love her anyways, but so the reason is that just as people work at all hours of the day, whether they're in law enforcement, healthcare, maybe it's a husband and wife that are tag teaming, taking care of their children, so one works nights, one works days. And for whatever the reason, it really helps when a city becomes a 24-hour city, not just for hospitality, but for everything. Transportation is available, meals, the whole gamut. And but especially, a lot of the young people that are like serving in restaurants and the like, are the people that they're getting off at 11 p.m. and then they want to socialize. And if we are cutting things off at 2 a.m., they're not even going to go, because by the time they get home, get ready, there's the venue, it's not worth going out. So we will be losing them to these other places like downtown Miami, which is already pretty much turning into a 24-hour city. And I want to say one other thing really quickly, and this is about the competition, not just here locally, but around the world, and including, well, California. So LA, California just passed, I understand they just voted, and it passed to extend their drinking hours. I think they were closing at 2, and now they're going to be closing at 4. And the reason, and I quote, I read this right from the news article, they quoted as they wanted to be able to compete with New York City, which is a 24-hour city, and with Miami, and with Atlanta, and Chicago, and the like. So we don't want to lose our edge, you know. So, and I say we as Miami Beach because we already have competition locally. So those crowds that think Miami, and normally, and like we've already heard, normally the vision is Ocean Drive. It would be a shame that the poster child for hospitality of, quote, Miami, which means the greater Miami area, would not even be open. You know what I'm saying? So the poster child is being lost in the...
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, for enlightening us on these different perspectives. I'd like to ask each of you, yes or no, if knowing what we know today of this simplified ballot question of the yes or no, knowing what we know today about the broad reach of the implications and possible ramifications, if you had the choice today, would you revert back and believe that a 10-point plan or a 12-point plan could be reached now instead of simplifying this to ramifications that we don't know? Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Overkill, that question. It's
Yes,
not
no.
addressing the particular issue. Would I support it? I am. No.
And one day? Yes. Okay. Hang on, let me just get to the back and work my way back up.
I'm a little bit biased because I'm in the entertainment business, but all I would say is I'm from London, as you can probably gather. And let me tell you, people don't talk about coming to Florida, for that they only mean Orlando or whatever the keys. They talk about Ocean Drive. Ocean Drive. No one would really know Washington unless they've been here already, or many of the other streets. I've been here for 20 years, and I still refer to South Beach mainly as Ocean Drive, because that's where people want to go. My question really is, when you lose all the British tourists, which maybe they are the people that arrive after 2, and you don't want them anyway, where are you going to get the money from?
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's, if someone wants to jump in, it seems like a statement.
So listen, I don't have the same doomsday scenario or outlook that folks on Ocean Drive do. I mean, Miami Beach has been pivoting to being a more global brand that has diversified from being the sun and fun capital of the United States to being an arts and culture capital. And we'll continue to diversify. So, you know, we don't have to be solely wed to being a party scene to make our money. I think we're seeing the Paina district, even here, the Cancun district in Collins Park, becoming much more tuned to drawing a cultural tourism than people who just want to come for, you know, spring break or bachelor parties.
All right. Good answer. Did you want to hear from?
Sure.
Lois? I was glad that Ricky addressed the cultural aspect of this city. Before the Ocean Drive started, this place was quite a booming queen place. But now, the whole excitement of what it was has diminished. And if we can't start to look at these things as a step one, I can't say it enough, the raindrop has to come. Something dynamic has to happen. It is not the cure, it is not the end, but it is making a statement that this city cares about what's happening. The tourists that are coming here, you're talking about the tourists that come here, when we have Art Basel, those people don't go down there, they think it's terrible. When it started, and they came here because Ocean Drive was fabulous, and they knew that this city was on the verge of becoming a cultural city. They came, and in the beginning, they all went, they stayed, they rented rooms and stayed on Ocean Drive. That came to a screeching halt. I don't think you'll find one person who comes to Art Basel now who's going down there. It's because the rest of the city is becoming a little more sophisticated, and they don't have to see what goes on. And please take this article if you haven't seen it.
If you don't mind, George. I want to talk about, I don't think it's doomsday, I think it's reality. And I think I'm not up here saying that Ocean Drive is perfect, and I'm not saying that the 10-point plan is the ultimate fix. If we go on our way to things, what I'm saying is that the 2 a.m. to 5 a.m., although you think it's going to cure that, it's not going to cure the crime issue where you guys are alluding to. But back to my gentleman from England. There's a reason why Mayor Levine, and why Ricky said earlier, Mayor Levine sat on Ocean Drive before the hurricane. There's a reason why Anderson Cooper was there. For the same reason, as Ricky alluded to in the beginning, that Miami is seen and known as Ocean Drive, whether we like it or not. So you have to take that very fragile, because if you send the wrong message, whether it's temporary or not, the repercussions could be something you can't dig out of. Okay? The hotels, there's 4,200 rooms in the MXC. What do they feed off? Whether we like it or not, it's Ocean Drive. Those hotels don't have amenities. They're charging anywhere from $79 to $129 a night, and they live and die off that street. You take away their clientele, whether we like it or not, we're going to be looking at it will be a doomsday scenario. And I'll tell you, I told you first, and we want to clean up, we want to do it with you. And Joe, I'm disgusted to hear that you got mugged or whatever happened. That's awful, okay? It's not acceptable. So let's work as a community with our police. I know Dan and me have had many conversations. We can do it together, but don't crush it. Be more sophisticated.
Okay, I think I have time for one more question. You're a business owner. It's okay.
Question. Well, I just wanted to say thank you very much to Ricky for working hard on the 10-point plan. It was a bridge to bid. And Mike, I think my question to you is to please be more clear about what a bid is, because, and Nancy also alluded to, that we used to have a business improvement district on South Beach where the businesses would raise money amongst themselves to pay for additional services, like additional police, additional security, additional lighting, everything you would need at a Dolphins game, and everything you would need at a big event. And Nancy, when you say, oh, the thing started to turn and started to go sideways in 1997, 1998, that's when the city, the drive started to emerge as a tourist destination. Everybody in this city is propped up by all this tourist development tax that comes in. Whether you like it or not, ma'am, you are paying less property taxes because of all the resort tax. It's going down. It's not recovered from Zika. The resort tax reserves are depleted. Mike, my question to you is to please explain to the room what a business improvement district is, since we made a deal with the city called the 10-point plan, which was a bridge to this business improvement district, which was then just violated during the whole Memorial Day fiasco.
well, I don't want to bore anybody, so I'll make it quick and simple. I think that a business improvement district, as he alluded to, is the business owners, we were soliciting the business owners to come together and then to come to bring in a consultant who does it for a living, who did the one for Lincoln Road, to basically put funds on our tax roll, to basically allocate money every year annually to that bid. And then the money that comes into the city would then be allocated to resources such as police, sanitation, and whatnot, whatever we need. And in fact, I think I alluded to in that first bid meeting that we have a minimum of 60% of whatever that budget was going towards police if need be to help get us to a better place. But it was just a bunch of businesses getting together, deciding what's best for them and for us and for the community is to do what we need to do, and we're ready to do it and still are.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
Yeah, so a bid is a great idea. It was part of the 10-point plan. It was part of the pass on Ocean Drive. Wynwood, just across the bay, recently put together their own bid, and you can see if you drive over there how wildly successful Wynwood is doing. Wynwood, a little more than 10 years ago, was a decrepit warehouse district. There were pioneers such as Tony Goldman, who was one of the pioneers of Ocean Drive, bought a lot of warehouses there and had a vision for it. And that vision started with arts and culture and bringing in galleries there, as well as what became the Wynwood Walls, and then sort of a cafe restaurant scene, and then it's evolved into retail. But if you actually study what's going on in Wynwood, it's very carefully curated with a view towards a very walkable, safe community that's a mix of retail, residential, and commercial, something that I think we all enjoy here in South Beach, but that, at least on Ocean Drive, is kind of gotten out of whack. And maybe it traces back to the closure of the bid, but there's been very little oversight and regulation on Ocean Drive. If you were a business, you could open on Ocean Drive with very little sort of oversight, and I think we're all suffering the consequences of a lack of coordinated vision on Ocean Drive, and what we're trying to do now desperately is to try to get our arms back around this so we can restore it back to its heyday.
Okay, so we're running out of time here, so I'm just going to kind of wrap it up. And first of all, thank the panel for willingness to get up here. It's not easy. This is clearly an issue that has divided folks, and there's some who feel very strongly in one direction or the other. And it's important to hear both sides. What I said earlier about talking to each other, not at each other. I think we can all agree that this, in and of itself, is not the solution to the problem. There's a major problem that needs to be addressed, and there are 10 points, and probably many more than 10 points that are necessary to really make a change on Ocean Drive. I want to thank you all. I want to thank Miami Beach United for inviting me and having me here. I hope you leave here better informed. I will encourage you to vote. I want to encourage you to vote often, but I often encourage you to vote. So go out there November 7th and
Thank you, George.
make your decision.